topic today is the Framework Agreement on Bangsamoro. So, noong October 15, 2012, isang peace agreement ang pinirmahan sa Malacanang Palace na tinatawag na Framework Agreement on Bangsamoro. So, ang goal nito ay palitan ang Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao at gumawa ng maayos na Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. So, si dating Pangulong Benigno Aquino III, tinawag ang ARM na isang failed experiment kaya nagkaroon ng ganitong kasunduan. So, ang kasunduan ay magbigay daan sa Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, isang malakas na self-governing political entity. So, sa kasaysayan ng Bangsamoro struggle bago ang kolonyalismo, ang Mindanao ay pinamumunuan ng Moro Sultanate tulad ng Sultanate of Sulu. So, nang sakupin ng Espanya at Amerika ang Pilipinas, na marginalize ang mga Moro na wala ang kanilang lupain at soberanya. So, dahil dito nabuo ang kilusan para sa kalayaan tulad ng Moro National Liberation Front or MNLF, lumaban noong 1970s. At yung mga Moro Islamic Liberation Front lumitaw bilang panibagong grupo. So, bakit nabigo ang ng peace agreements? Sa Tripoli Agreement ng 1976 sa Libya, wala itong sapat na pagpapatupad. Yung final peace agreement ng 1996 in Indonesia, nagtatag ng ARM pero kulang sa kapangyarihan. Yung ARM naman noong 1989, hindi naging epektibo ang governance. So, tinawag na failed experiment ang ARM dahil limitado ang kapangyarihan sa pamamahala, korupsyon at kakulangan sa pondo. Hindi nabigyan ng tunay na self-rule sa Bangsamoro. So, ang nilalaman ng mga framework agreement on Bangsamoro ay yung pagbuo ng Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, pagsulat ng Bangsamoro Basic Law at pagtatakda ng Sharia justice system para sa mga Muslim, pag-ayos ng revenue generation and wealth sharing, pag-disarm ng MILF bilang bahagi ng normalization. Ang normalization ito ay proseso ng pagtanggal ng armas ng MILF at pagpapalakas ng seguridad sa Bangsamoro Transition Commission. So, ang BTC ay natasang gumawa ng Bangsamoro Basic Law or ito yung BBL. So, 8 mula sa MILF, 6 mula sa gobyerno. Tapos, 100 million ang inilan para sa initial budget. So, ang tungkulin ng BTC ay gumawa ng Bangsamoro Basic Law, pag-amenda ng Philippine Constitution, pag-coordinate ng development programs sa Bangsamoro community. Saba issue, isa sa mga controversial na issue na konektado sa Bangsamoro struggle ay ang Saba dispute sa pagitan ng Pilipinas at Malaysia. So, noong 1878, ang Sultanate of Sulu ay nag-lease ng Saba sa British North Borneo Company pero hindi isinuko ang soberanya. So, noong 1963, bumoto ang mga taga-Saba na maging parte ng Malaysia, kaya sinabi ng gobyerno na ng Malaysia na settled na ang issue. So, noong 2013, lahat dato incident, Jamalul Kiram III, or ito siyang tagapagmana ng Sultanate of Sulu, ay nagdala ng 100 to 200 armed Filipinos sa Saba upang ipaglaban ang claim ng Pilipinas. Land law and resettlement. Ito ay tungkol sa mga batas na pag-ari ng lupa at pagpapalipat ng ng tao sa ibang lugar. Homesteader or settlers or indigenous groups. Sa ilalim ng batas, may limit sa bilang ng mga lupang pwedeng ariin. Noong 1903, 16 hectares. Noong 1919, 24 hectares. Noong 1936 naman, 16 hectares ang lupa na pwedeng ariin. So, para naman sa mga non-Christian tribes, Moros or indigenous groups, noong 1919, 10 hectares. Noong 1936, 4 hectares. At para naman sa mga corporations, laging 1,024 hectares ang limit. Case of Cotabato noong 1918 to 1970. So, ang table sa PPT nagpapakita ng pagbabago ng population sa Cotabato mula 1918 hanggang 1970. So, makikita dito na unti-unting bumababa ang bilang ng Moro at Lumad, habang tumataas naman ang bilang ng mga settlers mula sa ibang bahagi ng Pilipinas. So, noong 1918, dominado ng Moro ang Cotabato. Noong 1939, dumarami na ang Lumad. At noong 1970 naman, mas marami na ang mga settlers kumpara sa Moro at Lumad. So, population change, Mindanao, 1918 to 1970. So, noong 1918, may 32.17% Muslims at 9.9% ang Lumad. So, noong 1939, tumaas ang Muslim population sa 32.12%, pero ang Lumad ay naging 14.62%. So, noong 1970, bumaba ang Muslim population sa 23.85% at ang Lumad ay naging 6.41%. So, ang datos ay nagpapakita ng malaking pagbabago sa demografiya ng Mindanao mula sa dominasyon ng Moro at Lumad hanggang sa pagdami ng mga Christian settlers dahil sa resettlement program ng gobyerno.
I will be discussing the framework agreement in the Bangsamoro, developing government in the more Islamic Liberation Front, herein referred to as the party to this agreement. Number one is the establishment of the Bangsamoro, number two is the basic law, and number three is the powers. Replaces ARM as a new autonomous entity 2012 decision points. So the Bangsamoro is the new autonomous political entity referred to in the decision points of principle as of April 2012. So the government of the Bangsamoro shall have a ministerial form. So the electoral system shall be contained in the Bangsamoro Basic Law to be implemented through legislation enacted by the Bangsamoro government and correlated with national laws. Constituent units, provinces, cities, etc. retain privileges unless reformed for governance. So the provinces, cities, municipalities, barangays, and geographic areas within its territory shall be the constituent units of the Bangsamoro. Asymmetric relationship with central government. So the relationship of the central government with the Bangsamoro government shall be asymmetric. Identity includes descendants of indigenous Mindanao or Sulu peoples, respect self-identification of other groups. So, those who at the time of conquest and colonization were considered natives or original inhabitants of Mindanao and Sulu archipelago and its adjacent island, including Palawan, and their descendants, whether of mixed or of full blood, shall have the right to identify themselves as Bangsamoro by ascription or self-ascription. Spouses and their descendants are classified as Bangsamoro. The freedom of choice of other indigenous people shall be respected. So the number two is the basic law. So the Bangsamoro shall be governed by the basic law. The provision of the Bangsamoro basic law shall be consistent with all parties. The basic law shall reflect the Bangsamoro system of life and meet internationally accepted standards of governance. It shall be formulated by the Bangsamoro people and ratified by the qualified voters within its territory. So the number three is the power. So the annex on power sharing, which includes the principle on intergovernmental relations, shall form part of this agreement and guide the drafting of the basic law. The number two is the central government shall have powers on defense and external security, foreign policy, common market and global trade, provided that the power to enter into economic agreements already allowed under Republic Act number 9054 shall be transferred to the Bangsamoro. Coinage and monetary policy, citizenship and naturalization, and postal service. The list is without prejudice to additional powers that may be agreed upon by the parties. So the parties recognize the need to strengthen the Sharia courts and to expand their jurisdiction over cases. The Bangsamoro shall have competence over the Sharia justice system. The supremacy of Sharia and its application shall only be to Muslims. The Bangsamoro Basic Law may provide for the power of the Bangsamoro government to accredit halal certifying bodies in the Bangsamoro. The Bangsamoro Basic Law shall provide for justice institution in the Bangsamoro. This includes the competence over the Sharia justice system, as well as the formal institutionalization and operation of its functions. In the expansion of jurisdiction of the Sharia courts, must ensure to improve the workings of local civil courts when necessary and alternative dispute resolution system. The customary right and tradition of indigenous people shall be taken into consideration in the formation of the Bangsamoro justice system. This may include the recognition of indigenous processes as alternative modes of dispute resolution.
In my report, we will explore one of the most vital components of the framework agreement on the Bangsamoro, which is the revenue generation and wealth sharing. So this provision empowers the Bangsamoro government to generate its own income, manage resources, and ensure equitable sharing of wealth with the central government. So here, ang pinakauna is yung Bangsamoro. The Bangsamoro will have power na gumawa ng sarili nilang system ng pagbubuwis. Second, maaari silang mangolekta ng buwis, bayarin at iba pang kita sa loob ng rehiyon, sa isang rehiyon o region. Pangatlo, may karapatan silang tumanggap ng block grant mula sa national government bilang suporta. Fourth, maaari rin silang tumanggap ng iba pang tulong financial tulad ng subsidies at donations. Fifth, may patas na hatian sa kita mula sa paggamit ng likas na yaman, lalo na sa enerhiya at mineral. Sixth, maaaring magtatag ng sariling financial institutions o bangko para sa Bangsamoro. Seventh, may mekanismo para sa audit or mechanism para sa pag-audit at transparency ng kita upang masiguro ang wastong paggamit nito. And lastly, lahat ng ito ay may layuning matiyak ang fiscal autonomy at tuloy-tuloy na pag-unlad ng kanilang rehiyon. So, here we will discuss also one of the core aspects of the Bangsamoro peace process, which is the territory. So this part of the agreement defines not just the physical boundaries of the Bangsamoro region, but also the democratic process behind its formation and expansion. So here nakalist din yung mga uh, behind subtopics behind this topic. So first, ang pangunahing teritoryo ng Bangsamoro ay binubuo ng kasalukuyang ARM or Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, and ilang municipality sa ARM like yung Lanao del Norte, mga barangay sa North Cotabato, lungsod ng Cotabato at Isabela, at iba pang karatig lugar na nais mapasama bago ang ratifikasyon ng Bangsamoro Basic Law. Next, magkakaroon ng plebisito para sa pagsama ng mga lugar na ito at titiyakin ng mga partido na ito ay malawak na tinatanggap at isinagawa sa isang malaya, patas at lehitimong proseso na binabantayan ng third-party international observers. Third, maaaring sumama sa Bangsamoro ang iba pang karatig kahit hindi kasama sa core territory, as long as may petition na 10% ng mga residents at inapprove ng karamihan sa isang plebisito. Fourth, ang pagdedesisyon ukol sa mga katubigan or yung mga water resources natin ay tatalakayin sa mga annexes tungkol sa wealth at power sharing. Next, ang teritoryo ay hindi lang siya lupa, like dinefine siya dito, hindi lang daw siya lupa, kasama rin dito ang mga dagat, ilog, kalupaan, himpapawid at kalawakang atmosfera. Ang pamamahala ay ayon sa napagkasunduan ng mga partido. So lastly, ang Bangsamoro Basic Law shall recognize the collective democratic rights of the constituents in the Bangsamoro. In this segment, we will discuss the basic rights guaranteed to all citizens residing in the Bangsamoro. Here in this slide is nakalist yung mga rights na na-mention sa segment na to. However, I will not read that kasi masyadong marami. So, next slide I mean, kinikilala ang mga karapatan sa pag-aari at mga naunang pag-aari ng Bangsamoro, pati na rin ang mga paghihirap dulot ng mga pagkawala nito. Kung hindi na if ever na hindi na maibabalik ang mga properties, may mga program para sa makatarungan or just fair na compensation. Next is dapat is i-respect yung mga rights ng indigenous people. Next, the government is may responsibility sila na protektahan yung mga yung karapatan ng Bangsamoro na naninirahan sa labas ng rehiyon at suportahan ang kanilang komunidad. Maaaring tumulong ang Bangsamoro government sa kanilang pag-unlad.
Transition and implementation. The parties agree on transition period and will adopt an annex detailing the transitional arrangement. A transition commission will be created through an executive order, supported by the Congress to draft the Bangsamoro Basic Law aligned with existing and future agreements, propose constitutional amendments if needed to integrate the peace agreements, coordinate the development programs in Bangsamoro areas. The commission will consist of 15 Bangsamoro members, 7 appointed by the Philippine government GPH, and 8 including by the chair by MILF. It will operate independently from ARM and be funded by the GPH. The draft law will be certified as urgent by the President once the law is ratified in the Bangsamoro and the Transition Authority BTA is established. The ARM will be abolished, the BTA will assume devolved powers and implement a ministerial government and restructure the bureaucracy as needed. The BTA will govern until 2016 when elected officials of the Bangsamoro government take over. A third-party monitoring team, including international and domestic groups, will oversee the implementation of all agreements. At the end of transition, all stakeholders, including the Malaysian facilitator and monitoring team, will review the process. An exit document may be assigned once full implementation is achieved. Negotiations will continue until all issues are resolved. Normalization is essential to the peace process, aiming to restore security, stability, and quality of life in the Bangsamoro. It seeks to promote human security, protect rights, eliminate fear of violence, and uphold cultural traditions and values. These are the key elements of normalization, include professional policing. A civilian, impartial, and accountable police force will be established, free from political influence, and answerable to both central and Bangsamoro governments. An independent commission with local international experts will recommend the appropriate policing structure. Decommissioning of MILF forces. The MILF will gradually decommission its armed forces. Law enforcement roles will be transferred from the armed forces of the Philippine AFP to the Bangsamoro Police in a phased approach. Monitoring coordination. Existing mechanisms like GCCH, AHJAG, and IMT will monitor ceasefire agreements and assist with peacekeeping. These bodies will evolve into a Joint Normalization Committee, JNC, to oversee coordination until full decommissioning, disarmament, and disbandment. Both parties commit to controlling firearms and disbanding private armies and armed groups. Developing and rehabilitation. Programs will be implemented to support MILF combatants, displaced persons, and overvarished communities. The parties aim to attract international donor support and establish a trust fund to finance normalization projects transparently and effectively. An annex on normalization will detail processes and timelines forming part overall agreement.